Hello YouTube, Ram55 here, and tonight I'm back in Virtual Skipper 5 in a series that I'm going to call Sailing Saturdays. I'm going to be racing the offshore ocean racing yachts that you see here. I did some research online trying to figure out a little bit about these, if they are real boats, what their size is, their weight, and all that stuff, and I really couldn't find anything. But in this series, I'm going to be racing the role of the Great Britain boat, and each boat sails against every other boat in the series once. And now I'm showing you the ranking of the boats and their qualities. Over on the right, you see the hull, spinnaker, sails, and crew. And I'm showing them from what I consider the best to the worst. Great Britain's right in the middle, so that will give me a challenge in this series. And we're going to be getting started with the first race tonight. Again, it's a round-robin series. Each boat sails every other boat in the series once for a total of 11 races. And we'll be getting started here shortly. Hope you enjoy the series. So here we are off onto round one of our round robin. So we are playing the role of the Great Britain boat. We will sail against all these other boats once. A total of 11 races. And whoever has the most points at the end, I think the top 4 boats qualify for a playoff. Who's our first opponent? Italy. And Italy is a good boat. They have advantage over us in every respect. Tide and hull, slight advantage for Italy in spinnaker. We're equal in sails, they have a slight advantage in crew. Let's get out on the water. So we're at the offshore site L01, somewhere in Australia, don't know what that means. Sunny, southeast, force 5 winds, winds are shifty, tide is low. First thing we want to do is put our spinnaker up. You can see that there's a countdown timer over here. We're put on the water 5 minutes before the start of the race, and we cannot cross that start-finish line until that counter gets down to 4 minutes. And I think that means nowhere in front of that start-finish line. So we are on the race course side. Once we get the 4-minute mark, we want to get on the starting side, which is to the left of that line. So that's the class start signal. This is the prep signal, the P flag. That means that we are now in the position where we can go back across that line. It's less than 4 minutes. We have to get on the other side of that imaginary line where that yellow arrow is pointing to. And we have to do that before the timer gets down to 2 minutes. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the rule board up there so we can tell which boat has the right of way, which rule applies. I had a video earlier on what the different rules of racing are, and you'll see that the rules change depending on what the boats are doing, where they are, whether they're tacking, who's ahead, who's behind, who's upwind, who's downwind, and you use those rules to get an advantage over your opponent. Also down here in the bottom left is a tactical map view. We can zoom in and out on that so we can see the entire course. But when you look at that, the boats will be different colors. And the color of the boat corresponds to what rule's in effect and who has the right-of-way. My boat is always yellow, and the opponent boat will either be red or green, depending on who has the right-of-way. Now you can see Rule 12 applies it's red, meaning that this boat has the right of way. He's ahead of me. And over on the bottom left, his boat is also red. So another way to tell who has the right of way. Rule 12 is in effect. That means the boat ahead has the right of way, and if I'm overtaking him, I have to stay out of his way. But again, if you are interested in the rules, go ahead and look up the video that I made on the rules of sailboat racing. Now, as he changes tack, Rule 13 applies. And now Rule 10 and 15. 10 means boats on opposite tack. And 15 was while he was tacking. We'll zoom in here, and I'm going to go back this way. I don't like getting too far away from the start-finish line, and I like to start on a starboard tack simply because it gives me the right of way. So we'll sail in this direction, then I'm planning on coming back to the committee boat, turning around so that I'm going more or less parallel to the course on starboard, and then all I have to do is turn up into the wind and we are starting. So we'll keep an eye on what Italy is doing. So right now Rule 12 applies, and it's a green boat, so I have the right of way. Let's turn around and go back toward the committee boat. And since they are, by design, in the game, a better boat than me, it's going to be tactics and my boat positioning that will win this race. If it was an all-out speed race, they would win. Coming up on 40 seconds to the start of the race. They're maneuvering kind of sort of in the middle of the race course. Okay, let's tack back around. Head toward the committee boat, up pretty close to the line. May have left this a little bit too late, but I think we're still ahead of the boat from Italy. 5 seconds to go. We're on starboard, they're on port, we have right away. There's the start. We're going to just head up into the wind. Wait for that arrow to turn green. That means we're on the optimum heading for sailing into the wind. And we have the right of way here. They have to stay out of our way, so they have to go behind us or tack. And if they're not going to tack, I'm going to tack right on top of them. Now that slowed me down by tacking, but it kind of keeps me in a position where I can put myself between them and the next buoy, which is that marker way off in the distance. That's the one we have to go around next. We have to pass it on to port. In other words, it'll go down our left side. Now, unfortunately, because they have probably a slightly faster boat, they may be able to pull away from me here. But if they tack, I'm in their way. They'd have to stay out of my way. So we're in a fairly good position. Trying to take advantage of all these little wind shifts quickly. Now you see those dark lines moving over the water. I think those are indicating wind shifts and puffs. Supposedly the wind will change direction or speed as the color of the water changes. So we are both on port tack. We do have overlap. So basically they are the downwind boat. I have to stay out of their way. See if the wind changes speed or direction here. And we want to react quicker than the boat from Italy to take advantage of all those little nuances to get a slight advantage. So we are actually inching ahead of them, partly because of that wind shift there. Down here is all the information you need about tactics and whatnot. The TWA stands for true wind angle. It's 34 degrees off the left side of the boat. True wind speed 18.6, 18.4 knots. True wind direction is heading 142, so you can see over here on this compass, the blue is the true wind direction, so it's now 149, and the blue arrow is coming from 149. The green arrow is the apparent wind direction. As the boat moves forward, that wind direction changes a little bit. The yellow line over here is the current. Now we were able to force them above the line. We could have tacked earlier and made this mark. But by sailing the course we did, we kept them from tacking in front of us to go to the mark. So now they are behind us just because of the way the wind was, the rules of the sailing were. They could not tack until we got out of their way. Now down here is the heading of my boat. That's the heading up here at the top. The course over the ground takes into account slippage from the wind. So as the wind is blowing, it is not only propelling us forward, but there's going to be a little bit of slippage to the side. And the other thing, it takes into account the current, which is indicated there in yellow. So what I want to do is get this number, the course over the ground, to closely match the course to the next mark. So I can turn left about 3 degrees. And that'll take me close to that mark, close as I can get it, so I don't have to sail as far. Boat speed's 8.6 knots, speed over the ground, that takes into account current and all that stuff too. Almost the same. DNM, I think, is distance to the next marker. Heel angle, 22 degrees of heel. Velocity made good, 5 knots. And the apparent wind angle is 38 degrees now off on the starboard side of the boat. So we're looking pretty good here. We've got Italy trapped behind us. Their boat being green means that we have the right of way. We are on the same tack and we're ahead of them. Now I want to start hoisting my spinnaker a little bit before we get to that mark, because by the time the spinnaker gets up, we will be around. Once we look down here at the bottom left at the map screen, once we're inside that circle, the giving room at the mark rule applies. I'm going to put my spinnaker up now. We're red, so that rule applies. Spinnaker's up. We're rounding the mark perfectly. Make that arrow green. We round the mark, and Italy will be behind us, and that will be indicated here in the time. They are 10.5 seconds behind, so pretty good for us on the first leg. Now we just want to keep that mark green. The next point that we're sailing to are 2 buoys out here. They're called gates, so we can go around either one of them. Either one will work. But we have to go in between them, and we can go to the left or to the right. Again, we want to keep that arrow green. That'll be the fastest way of sailing, going downwind, even with the spinnaker up. You think going dead downwind will be quicker, but it really isn't. Going off on a slight reach like this, a little bit off the wind, is actually the quickest point of sail for a sailboat. Now when you're sailing in the lead like this going downwind, the boat behind actually can block the wind of the boat ahead. And you try to do that, you block their wind, and you can try to use that to catch up to them. I'm trying to make that arrow green. We're almost to the point where we can tack, and actually it would be jibe since we're going downwind, and make that mark. And since they're jibing now, I'm going to go right with them. And I actually waited too long. What I want to do is get back in front of them. I'm sailing slightly a higher course. Now they're going too much to the left. And you can see that they are actually, and I'm going to use my right-of-way rules to get in front of them. And they have to stay out of my way. Again, using the rules to my advantage. And now I'm just going to sail to that mark. Looked like they were going to actually sail right around me. So by getting in front of them, I'm using the right-of-way rules to make sure that they stay behind. And I want to start getting that sail down before we actually get up to that mark. In fact, I'm going to do it now. Sail, the spinnaker's coming down. We want it down before we round the mark, otherwise we won't be able to make an efficient turn. So it's coming down. We're rounding the mark. And we are close haul. They're still working on getting their sail up. We've rounded the mark up here. How far behind are they? 12 seconds. So we picked up 2 seconds on that leg. And that's simply because I think they sailed a little bit further past the mark than they would like to have. So this race is actually pretty good at showing how the tactics of sailboat racing work. Again, we have a slower boat, but we're using our position of advantage to stay in front of them. On that downwind run, if we hadn't moved in front of them, they could have sailed right around us and they would be in the lead. But we used the rules of sailing to get in front of them to make sure that we could not get past. Now it's just a matter, again, of taking advantage of all those little subtle changes in the wind speed, keeping our boat on a good course, and then trying to match what they do. We don't want to get too far away from them. Being close like this, you can match whatever the other boat does. When you're on opposite sides of the course, wind shifts may affect one boat or the other, but when you're close together like that, the wind shifts will affect you both. And I can kind of keep my boat in a position where they don't or can't do what they want to do. For instance, when we went to that first mark, I kept them from tacking when they wanted to. Now I want to keep my boat in a position where they can't get too far away from me. I've been in regattas in real life where, boats are all over the water and the wind comes in and shifts and it favors certain boats depending on where they are on the water. And the other boats can just watch. There's nothing they can do about it. If it's favoring them and you're on the other part of the water where the wind shift isn't hitting you or takes a little bit longer there or it's not there at all, you get screwed. And that's why in match racing, in other words, one boat versus another, it's not a regatta where there's a bunch of boats on the water. You want to be fairly close to your opponent. You want to make sure that he doesn't get a favorable wind shift that will put him in the lead and screw you, especially when you're in the lead. Now, when you're behind, you want to get away from the other boat. You want to hope that maybe you get a wind shift that your opponent doesn't get. Now, with these boats, looks like this angle off of our bow is about 30 degrees. So when we tack, we're going to have the boat 30 degrees off the other direction. So I use that to figure out where to tack. Our heading is 173. We're going to take about 60 degrees to tack to get on the other course. We got another wind shift there. Let's jump all over it, take advantage of it, make sure that Italy doesn't sneak ahead. Anyways, it'll be about 60 degrees, and what I want to do is wait for this course to the next mark to be about 60 degrees off the heading of my boat. So that would be right now about 108. So when this number gets down here to 108, that's about time to tack to make that mark. That doesn't take into account current and wind shifts and other things. So, you know, it's a risk depending on when you tack. If you tack too early, now you have to tack twice to get around that mark. Every time you tack, the boat speed goes down, you waste time. And if your opponent only tacks once, they pick up ground on you. So again, 168, waiting for this number to get down to about 108. I want to give it a little bit extra room too, just for wind shifts and stuff like that. So there was a wind shift. This is down to 158, so actually we can probably, I know we can. We're going to attack now. Not a very efficient attack, but we can make that mark now. Of course, we need is 086, we're sailing 087, so we'll be able to get around that mark. Italy tacked a little bit later. We should easily make it to that mark well ahead of them. So we are 12 seconds ahead at the last mark at the gate. Let's see where we are ahead on this one, and then it's just a sprint to the finish. Got to make sure that we don't hit the mark, because that's a penalty. If you hit the mark, you have to do a 360-degree turn. Let's get the spinnaker up now, and we will be off to the races. We have rounded that mark. Italy had to do a tack, it looks like, so we're going to be way ahead of them. We got this race in the bag. I wasn't really paying attention to what they did. They were fairly close to us, but somehow they screwed up. Yeah, we're 21 seconds ahead. We should have this one pretty easily. Oh, guess what? We got to go through the gate again. It's not a sprint to the finish. On the shorter races, same race, you hit the start-finish line, you go around the first mark, and then through the gate, like we did, and then back to the mark, and then to the start-finish line. Looks like we're going to go through the gate here, back to the mark, and then to the start-finish line. So we will have a couple more legs to go on this race. So we still have to be on our toes. We can't assume that we're going to win. If this was just a race to the finish, yeah, we've got this in the bag. But we can still blow this. Big wind shift. Again, we want to get the spinnaker down a little bit early. That way we can round the mark very efficiently. If the spinnaker stays up, we can't go upwind very well until that spinnaker comes down. So by getting it down a little bit early, we'll be able to round real tight around this mark. That may have been a little bit too early though. Now we'll come up, get on starboard tack. This is where it can be a little bit tricky because we are so far ahead of the boat from Italy. It looks like we're going to be on opposite tacks now too. So that'll be interesting. But they're having trouble getting their spinnaker down. I'm going to tack just so we can get over to the same side of the course as them. It's an extra tack that costs us time and distance. I hope I didn't screw up there. We were 21 seconds ahead on rounding that gate. And I think we were, what, 22? I can't remember, on the last mark. So they beat us by maybe a second there. So we still have a pretty good lead. We got to pay attention to the wind shifts. So again, using that 60-degree rule, looking for this course to the next mark, getting down to about 114. But that's assuming no wind shifts. That's why you want to give yourself a little bit of a buffer. You don't want to go right on the course to the next mark. If there's a wind shift, you may not make it and you have to tack twice. And I think that might be what happened to Italy. They ended up tacking twice and you lose a lot of time when you do that. They were 10 seconds behind and then all of a sudden it jumped to 20 seconds and they tacked. I think they tacked quite early. But again, this is match racing. We don't want to get too far away from the other boat, so we may tack on top of them. Not really sure if I should, or maybe that, no, we're close enough. I think we'll just sail to the mark. But you can see that we are ahead of them. So now we're looking for a 109 course to the next mark when we tack. They're not going to be able to make it, so they're going to have to tack at least twice. If we play our cards right, we should only have to tack once, so we're ahead. We only have to tack once, that'll put us further ahead, and we'll be able to lay the mark. But we have to watch it carefully. Keep that arrow green. So now 119. We're actually to a point where we can make that without, hopefully, without a wind shift. So we're a little bit too early. Of course, with the ground's 107. That wind shift there helped. 109, we're very close to the mark. Hopefully we don't get headed. In other words, have the wind come more to the front of the boat, because we'll have to go more to the left or fall off the wind, and we won't be able to make that mark. Right now we are right on the course line of the mark line, so it's very close. It just depends on the wind shifts. But regardless, Italy's going to have to tack twice. We may only have to, we may not have to tack at all, but if the wind shifts, at worst we'll tack twice, same as what Italy will have to do. But tactically, we're looking pretty good. Okay, that we got headed there, so we had to bring the course to the left. Now we cannot make the mark. Our course is 106. The course we need is 110. So we're going to have a wind shift to get back on the course, on the mark line. A little bit unlucky, but there was a long distance to go, and with the winds being shifty, I guess we couldn't count on that. Hopefully this will be a favorable wind shift here. Not yet. Regardless, I'm not sure where Italy's going. I'm not sure why they're waiting so long to attack. They should be coming over this way again. That's one criticism I do have of the game. The AI, not the smartest folks in the world. For instance, they should have tacked a long time ago. And we got headed again, so I'm tacking now. Now we're waiting for this course to get down to 112. We're almost there actually right now. So we're going to tack back. Oh man, another header. Unbelievable. We may have to tack 3 times to get around this mark. Let's see if we can just kind of luff around it. Yeah, this was not good on our part. Okay, let's put up the spinnaker. That was bad. We had to tack 3 times. That was bad on my part. Didn't have to be this close. But we're still beating them. In fact, Italy has some problems. They are in irons. In other words, they're heading into the wind, lost all their speed and momentum. They had difficulty coming back around, so that saved us. So now, let's see how far behind. 16 seconds. So they beat us on that mark, or on that leg. They were 21 seconds behind, but only by 5 seconds. Now it's just a matter of beating them to the finish line. You can see that rather than having to go through the gates, we just have to cross the line. And being as far ahead as we are, that shouldn't be a problem. Again, just pay attention to the wind shifts, take advantage of all the little nuances to stay ahead. But they ain't going to beat us by 16 seconds on this leg. If they do, I'll get fired as skipper. Perfect wind shift. We jive the boat. Even though Italy appears to be closing the ground on us, there's just, I don't think, any way that they're going to make up that kind of ground. Even though they're coming on pretty good. So they made up a lot of ground on that last leg, but we're going to beat them across the line and win the race. So even though Italy was the better boat, we used tactics to our advantage. Boom. Excellent. So that's the end of race 1. Let's see how everybody else did. So Great Britain defeats Italy. Australia beats Switzerland. France beats New England. Wow, United States was upset by Germany. Spain beats China, and Brazil beats Japan. So that's the end of the first round. And here's the points. Some big upsets there. So that's the first round. Thanks for watching. We come out victorious, and we're off to a good start. So as always, I appreciate your comments, things you like about the series, the videos, things I can do better. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video, subscribe if you'd like, and we'll see you guys on the water next time.